በትምህርት ከፍ ብሎ መብረር ይቻላል። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ከከፍተኛ ትምህርት አግባብነትና ጥራት ኤጀንሲ ሙሉ ዕውቅናን ባገኘንባቸው በማስተርስ ዲግሪ ኤምቢኤ በስትራቴጂክ ማኔጅመንት፣ ኤምቢኤ በባንኪንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ ኤምቢኤ በቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ፣ ኤምቢኤ በሪስክና ኢንሹራንስ፣ ኤምኤስሲ በኢንተርናሽናል ትሬድ እና ኢኮኖሚክስ ዘርፎች በእውቀት ለመቅረጽ የበቁ ፕሮፌሰሮቻችን አረንጓዴ መብራታቸውን አብርተዋል። በነገራችን ላይ በኬንያ ሀገር ከሚገኙ ስመጥር ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በሚመጡ ፕሮፌሰሮች የትኩረት መስክ ትምህርቶቹ መሰጠታቸው ልዩ ያደርገናል። በምርጥ የትምህርት ስርዓት የተገነባው ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ በመጀመሪያ ዲግሪ በአቪዬሽን ማኔጅመንት፣ በሆቴል ማኔጅመንት፣ በአካውንቲንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ በማርኬቲንግ ማኔጅመንት አስተማማኝ ትምህርት ይገቢውና ራስዎንና ሀገሮን ይለውጡ። አድራሻ 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።
Now, so I think let's just briefly, I want just to take you through a discussion. I think we are all of us except two people. We have Biru, we have Alemayu and Bekal. I thought I'm seeing here, we are four. Biru is entered again. I think he has several gadgets. Yes, but it's okay. The session is being recorded. I think it's being recorded. Let's see. So that it is recorded. So when it is recorded, that means we can share it later. Now, so I had introduced this aspect yesterday when we were having our lectures. We introduced the aspects of the theories of corporate governance, and there are about 13 or 14 different theories. And amongst all those theories, I think that we discuss the class hegemony, agency theory, which are very common, stewardship theory, which is very common, the stakeholder theory, legality theory, and so many of them. So I think it's important as a student of corporate governance to just make sure that these are at your fingertips, some of these theories. And again, as it is, from the lecture notes, it's very detailed and you can read. So for just as a rewind, we say that we even gave the difference between stakeholders and shareholders. And what we are saying here is that a stakeholder is any individual or group of individuals on which the activities of the company have an impact. An individual or group of individuals who the activities of the company have an impact. In that regard, then you can see that the network of stakeholder is much wider. So anybody, if you're talking of the community where the factory is set or where the company is set, we'll consider them as stakeholders because the activities of the company has an impact on their lives. You see, suppliers will be considered stakeholders. We agreed that, right? Your buyers will be considered, customers will be considered as stakeholders. We agreed on that. The employees themselves, the people who are employed in that company will be considered stakeholders, you see. The management, the directors and all those people will also be considered stakeholders. So you see this network of stakeholders is very wide. So they can be a person, a group, or possibly a human entity. So it doesn't even have to be human beings, A stakeholder can also be a non-human. We are saying here it can be non-human entity, which means when we start talking about things like corporate social responsibility, then you realize that if we include, for example, I wanted to color this separately, yeah. So it can include non-human entity, right? Which means the environment could be part of the stakeholder. Is a stakeholder because the activities of the company affects the environment. So it's part of the stakeholder. So I think this has expounded our thinking to realize that stakeholder is not limited to human beings or groups of people. It extends to even non-human entity. So the environment, the rivers, the vegetation, the trees around that area is considered as a stakeholder. So that's basically what we really need to look at, to see that this concept is wider and embraces much more than we previously thought about. So on the other hand, shareholder is a bit different. We say that, and we discussed this, I think Bekal and Biru, the bankers, gave us examples of how banks encourage the employees to be shareholders, to buy shares, to be part of the investment in the bank. And that then becomes a shareholder. So we agreed that shareholders are also stakeholders. We agreed. But we say that not all stakeholders are shareholders. You see? Because you're saying stakeholders can be viewed, shareholders can be viewed as stakeholder group, but for the purposes of this discussion, shareholders will be viewed as being distinct from the stakeholder group. So these are people who invest their money to provide risk capital for the company, you know. So if you buy a share, it means you are investing in that company, and your money is basically being used by the company for trade, to expand and grow. So it's basically you are providing a risk capital for the company to grow, right? And that's basically now why we call you a shareholder. In many legal jurisdictions, shareholders' rights are enshrined in law, whereas those of the stakeholder group are not. So as a shareholder, basically in many corporate governance structure, the law protects you as a shareholder, basically in terms of what is expected as your returns and all those kinds of things. So this discussion is important because it sets that apart. So then within the Commonwealth countries, the OECD countries, which I believe even Ethiopia is part of. Well, Ethiopia is not a Commonwealth country. Ethiopia was never colonized. But then some of these principles cut across, you know, looking at what are the rights and obligations of shareholders. So maybe I want to look at them, and maybe later in our discussion, if you find that some of them are not applicable in the Ethiopian situation, then we can discuss that. So number one is the basic shareholder rights, including rights to transfer shares. So you have the right to transfer your share. You have the right to appoint directors, and you have the right to receive dividends. So those are your rights as a shareholder, right? You can transfer your shares, you can appoint directors, and you can receive dividends. So those are your basic rights. Number two, approval of key corporate decisions. So as a shareholder, you get consulted on key decisions in the company, like maybe a decision to fire the CEO, right? Shareholders may be consulted. Maybe a decision to fire some of the directors, shareholders can be consulted. Maybe a decision to lay off staff, maybe a decision to increase salaries, maybe a decision to cut off salaries. So some key decisions will require that shareholders are consulted, and their approval is very necessary. Now, your third obligation or right is equitable treatment during shareholder meetings. So we expect people to be treated equally, regardless of the number of shares that you hold, right? So this is critical. So unfairness of treatment, where maybe somebody is treated much better because they have more shares than you, is not allowed, is not part of the rights. The fourth one is rights to protection from potentially abusive acts of conflict of interest, including unfairly related party transactions. So you are also protected from abuses and acts of conflict of interest. as a shareholder. That's very critical. There are also clear rules during changes of corporate control. Sometimes the organization changes hands, maybe from one CEO to another or from one director to another. This basically should not affect your shareholding unless there are issues that are very clear and is in the public domain, right? So that's critical. So again, good shareholder record keeping, right? So that's critical. Shareholders should have confidence in the system that maintains their ownership records, So in terms of your share contribution, in terms of your interest that you're gaining, in terms of the dividends, so you should be able to have confidence in the organization that this is being done in the right way, right? There is also right for shareholder redress, which gives shareholders the right to take legal action when their rights are violated. So as a shareholder, when you feel that the organization is violating your rights, then you are called upon to take legal action. You see that? So you don't have to keep quiet when you see maybe your dividends is not calculated well, or maybe the organization is not using the right ratio to calculate your dividends. So you are allowed to take legal redress. Maybe I'll just look at the Kenyan context, then I'll allow you a discussion on some of these principles and how they are applicable from the Ethiopian perspective, right? So a bit of the Kenyan context is that Kenya's shareholder rights framework is strongly influenced by the common law heritage because Kenya is a former colony of Britain, and that is why some of these laws still hold, right? Kenya is a common law country, and I say that, and much of its corporate legal framework is based on decades-old UK legislation. So a lot of our legislation is still based on the UK systems, and basically in terms of corporate governance and protection of shareholders, still there's a lot of leaning towards that. And so we have what is called the Companies Act, which again has been presented in Parliament and also upholds those laws. So what you're saying is that on an index rate of 0 to 10, this Kenya would score maybe 5, which is basically above the African region of 4.5, in terms of protection of shareholder interest and corporate governance. So it ranks 100 globally on the strength of investor protection and 20th out of 24 African countries in the Eastern Europe and Central Asian region. So that is in terms of scores on corporate governance and protection of shareholder rights, right? So I think this is basically as a Kenyan context, and I've said a lot of our legal systems are still based on the common law, which is the UK system. And normally that is much applicable to most of the countries normally called the Commonwealth countries. Commonwealth countries are a group of countries in Africa and a part of Asia, including India, that were colonized by the British. I know Ethiopia is not part of the Commonwealth, but basically that's why I would want maybe just a little bit of a discussion from you so that I hear about whether these principles I discussed, the principles I discussed are basically mainly related to the common law as it applies to many of these OECD countries. So maybe let me just hear from you whether there are any divergence or it's basically the same, even with the Ethiopian context. The principles that I've just gone through, right? So maybe we can just discuss that and see whether these principles also are applicable in your case. Yes, Biru, you want to start that discussion? Biru?
Okay.
How do you, yes, go ahead.
uh, as Kenyans in Ethiopia, when the company is establishing with shareholders by selling share or an action, people are contributing their status or depending upon their budget or their money. So the dividend is also shared according to their
contribution.
According to their, and the meeting is done every year in most of the companies. There is an annual meeting, and in the annual meeting, the profit and loss and all the activities are uh, uh, in the meeting. All the informations are given for shareholders by board of directors and CEOs. So depending upon their share, they may give votes for any requests asking by board of directors. So the amount of money they have or the shares they have limited their what to call it, their votes their vote limitation. So there is a limitation depending upon their contributions. So, any shareholders can transfer their share for other parties, or they may sell their share for the shareholders, but the CEO and the board of directors should approve before they are selling, because if it is freely given the right to sell this share, maybe competitors may buy this share and attack the company. So there is a limitation to sell the share for other parties. The board of directors should approve. During the establishment of the companies, the board of directors are, I don't know by whom they are appointed, because the shareholders are not buying shares during the first establishment time, but there is a directors. I think they are selected by each other, friends, or the one who has what call it, the owner of the company, the one who brought the idea, the one who brought the idea to establish that firm, may call his friends or those people who can assist him. But by any means, there is boards who are working as the board of directors. But every 5 years, there is also a new selections of board of directors, and at that time, the shareholders have the right to give a vote for all the members of the shareholders, and the shareholders may select or elect the new board of directors. This is the way how the shareholders are activated in Ethiopia.
Yeah, I think that's very elaborate and very detailed. You have done it. I think that's very well done, and I guess quite elaborate and very detailed. And I think it is just in line with some of the principles I talked earlier. There is only one question which you posed, which maybe I want if there is anybody who can answer it. You are saying that uh, when the company is just starting and there are no shareholders, maybe people have not bought shares. So you are asking who then appoints the board of directors, if they should be appointed by the shareholders. But when the company is just beginning and there are no shareholders still, so you're asking a question, who then appoints the board of directors? Who wants to try that? That's a question that
let me try.
Yeah.
Let me try.
Yeah, just go on.
There is a business law. You know, Ethiopia has a business law. In its civil law, a part of the civil law, there is a business law. In that business law, every procedure is outlined properly. There are 4 types of business structure in Ethiopia. Among them, the share company is one. In the share company, how it will be established, what is the rights and duties of the shareholders, the rights and duties of the board, how they can establish the board. That is detailed, and any share
Mm-hmm.
company when established, the law is adopted from the French law, by the way. The authorities at that time was mostly educated in French, and the law is adapted from French law. Basically, most of the things are taken from the French law. It's not Ethiopia was not colonized and not influenced by any law, but due to the interest of the people formulating the law, they were educated in France, so they are influenced by that, and they adopt a lot of things from the French law. When I come to the Bruce question, there is no board of directors during establishment. The rule says there are a steering committee. The steering committee or the initiators, some initiators formulate the law, sell a share, and finally, after finalizing the sales of the share, they call a general meeting of shareholders. On that shareholder, they elect the first board of directors, and the company will not start operation until they elect the board of directors and they appoint the general manager with the general assembly of the shareholders. Unfortunately, in the Ethiopian context, mostly those steering committee members are going to be elected as a board of directors, but there is no board of directors before establishment. It is called a steering committee. This is the answer.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think that's yeah, it's a good answer. I think you have done it well. Yeah. So what Alemayu says is that to answer Biru's concern was that in the beginning we have a steering committee, which basically then handles the affairs of the company until possibly then the CEO is chosen, and then you have shareholders who then would then come up and have the board of directors. Yes, so I think that's good, and I guess we have learned a lot from the Ethiopian context. If there was anybody else who maybe wanted to add something apart from what Biri, you're free. But I think they have really done a good job in that, in trying to explain what exactly. And I think Alemayo has also alluded very well that a lot of the rules, the common law. Yeah, just something. You are talking of the 4 business laws. You only talked of the share company. The other 3 you didn't mention. Alemayo.
Those are sole proprietorship, joint venture, and PLC.
Yeah, yeah.
Sole proprietorship.
Yes.
PLC.
Yeah. And,
joint venture and share company are the 4 type of business structure commonly outlined in the business law of Ethiopia.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So I think that's very well explained. Unless there's somebody who has something else to say, I like the way Biru and Alemayu have explained that. So maybe let's go further and then look at protection of shareholders during changes in control, right? And I think we have tried to explain this. Here, maybe then we normally have control being regulated by what we call the capital markets, right? Which then, here in Kenya, we have what we call the capital markets regulation, which controls the takeovers and the mergers, right? So let me just discuss this, then we shall look at it from the Ethiopian perspective. So this regulation requires a public offer be made by anyone acquiring 25% or more of a company's shares with the intent of taking control of that company to all shareholders, right? So, so it basically means that if you are acquiring 25% or more of the company shares, then this intent must be made known to all the shareholders, you know. So let's take note of that. The board of the target company must hire an independent advisor on the offer and share their advice with the shareholders, especially this individual who wants to take over 25%, you know, who is he, and maybe why do they want to take most of the shares? So this is really protected by law. Again, the Companies Act and the covers mergers and regulation also provide for 80% or more of the shares. So you may offer the remaining shareholders either the offered price or the market price, whichever. So that means if somebody, a bidder, has acquired 90% or more of the shares, then again they can offer this to the market at a certain regulated price, right? Similarly, shareholders may require the bidder to acquire any remaining shares when it has acquired at least 90% of the shares. So if somebody has taken at least 90% of the shares, they may be required to take maybe more. Capital markets legal framework provides procedures governing the delisting of a company. So sometimes a company can also be delisted, let's say from the stock exchange, right? For reasons like their governance structure is not good or something like that. That can also happen. Now, there are few obligations or recommendations that apply to institutional investors with regard to the exercise of their voting rights or the engagement with the company in which they own their shares. So there are also certain regulations that we shall see that controls the shareholders, especially the majority shareholders within the company. So number one, they are not required to disclose their policies. They are not required to disclose their policies on conflict of interest, right? However, they should disclose to their clients any material conflict of interest which could impair the rendering of unbiased and objective advice. See? So the people who have huge shares in the company basically are supposed to disclose any conflict of interest within to the other shareholders. We said shareholders should be confident with the record keeping of the company. And we say this is normally managed by what we call the registrar. For this case, then I'll try to find out what happens in the Ethiopian case. And a variety of custodian, for example, even we have what we call the central depository system that then is involved in record keeping, what is normally called the CDS. Yeah, the CDS is new but technically proven and is considered by market participants to be a major improvement from the old paper-based system. So the record keeping is normally electronic, and we have what is called the central depository system that keeps your shares and everything, and you can get all this data from the central depository system. So it's unlike the old way when we were using paper, documents like paper and books to keep your records. Now, the committee, so how do you improve minority shareholder protection? Yeah, so we have looked at the majority shareholder. What about the minority? The committee recommends a series of actions that can be expected to improve minority shareholder protection in Kenya. And basically, let's see whether this is also applicable what the status is in Ethiopia, to provide corporate governance input to the draft bill, which has already been said, to push to enact new companies bill to try to protect the minority, update the investor protection provisions in the regulations and guidelines to strengthen protection of minority shareholders, carry out advocacy and sensitization of investor and key stakeholders, carry out visibility. Basically, what we're trying to say here is there is a move to try to protect the minority shareholders as well in this country. And I'm sure the same could be happening in Ethiopia as well. So basically then what I've said, it's now very clear that shareholders are indeed stakeholders as well, right? Because they have a stake. The functioning of the company has an impact on them. If the company doesn't perform well, they don't get dividends or they don't get profits. If the company collapses, then you see the money also is at risk. And that's very critical. I think this table here tries to explain that. Maybe I should make it a bit up to 100, yes. Key distinction between shareholder and stakeholders. So you see, so the purpose, they maximize shareholder wealth, right? That is shareholder. Stakeholder perspective is to pursue multiple objectives of parties. I hope you're seeing that. Governance structure for shareholder is principal agent mostly. For stakeholder is a team production model. Governance process for shareholder is mainly control. For stakeholder is coordination. And then performance metric for shareholder is shareholder value. Shareholder value sufficient to maintain investor commitment, whereas the other is applicable for the thing. So again, that's just trying to look at the shareholder rights and how the law protect the majority shareholder and the minority shareholder. And again, just trying to look at the current situation in Kenya, which, as I said, there's quite enough protection. Maybe let me pause it there and try to find out, is there, when you look at the protection of stakeholders, yeah, you see we have looked at the shareholders, but now the stakeholders, from the Ethiopian perspective, I don't know what you'll say. Is it comparable to what I've given in the Kenyan perspective? Is there something that can be borrowed from the Kenyan perspective? Can we improve on it or something like that? So maybe I don't know who wants to try this from the Ethiopian context. Protection, shareholder rights and obligations. Stakeholder, you know what we've just looked at was shareholder, but now I want us to look at the stakeholder rights and obligations from the Ethiopian context. Bekal, you should try this now. Bekal?
Yes.
Try this one now. Try this one, protection of stakeholder rights
when we see
from the Ethiopian context.
Okay, when we see in our Ethiopian context, especially I'm focused on the banking industry. Most
yes, that's likely.
Okay. Most likely.
You have to make it general.
No, it's okay. Let him just
I can
look
talk
at the
what I
industry.
know.
Then, yeah, it's good to talk what you know.
Central bank.
Okay. Yeah.
Then we have got central bank which governs all private bank and commercial banks. They are obliged to have a corporate governance rules and regulations within their own bank. They should have to have a manual for practicing good governance, and also the little shareholders, the person who have a little share, it is protected by the central government, Central Bank of Ethiopia, National Bank. It's called National Bank. National Bank control everything. Every time when there is a problem, National Bank always have got rules and regulations to order and a little bit much more helping those few shareholders to have their own priority, and to vote for themselves. To vote for themselves. That's what I have.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. I think that's very precise. You are talking of the Ethiopian Central Bank protecting the interest of the shareholders. Is that what you've said? Yeah. Okay. Good. You've muted yourself, Bekal. Unmute, Bekal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always they want to have a new rules and new regulations. They take corrective actions for every bankers in Ethiopia. National Bank of Ethiopia control every bankers in respect to the good governance, creating corporate good governance. Yeah. Did you get me?
Okay. Yeah. From the banking perspective, I think Bekal has given us a very good. Yeah. Okay. I don't know if somebody wanted to look at it from a different perspective, not from the banking.
Let me say something. I'm Kirubel, doctor.
Yes, Kirubel, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm telling. I will say something in legal perspective. I don't know it is really applicable or not in Ethiopia. But when we see stakeholders have actually legal decision-making rights and may control also project scheduling and budgetary issues. Most project stakeholders also have responsibilities to the business that include educating developer, financing projects, creating scheduling parameters, and setting milestones. But this is in legal. What I'm thinking is in legal in legal side. I don't know really these things are applicable for stakeholders in Ethiopia.
They are, because Bekal has just given us how they are applicable in the banking industry and how the National Bank of Ethiopia then has a way of protecting shareholders, both minority and majority. I don't know. What do you say, Alimayu? Because Kirubel is of the opinion that he thinks that there are no stakeholder rights in Ethiopia.
Yes, Kirubel is right.
He's right.
Yeah, he is right, because we have the law. As I mentioned, we have a business law. In that business law, it is the shareholders' right, and everything is well detailed and outlined properly. But there is no enforcing authority. You know, the problem is with the enforcers. There is no capital market in Ethiopia, by the way. There is no capital market, and usually the law is enforced by the sectors. As Baakal said, the financial sector has a strong controlling unit, the National Bank. Both the banking and insurance industries are well regulated and controlled by the central bank. When we come to the industry and trade, the Trade and Industry Minister is not strong, and you know what we call share is share in Amharic. That means share is a trick. Share is a trick, and some people organize a share, they lose the money and they disappear. This is what happened in Ethiopia. There is no strong law enforcer. There is the law, as I mentioned, but there is no strong enforcer for the law.
For the law. Yeah.
I think that is what Kirubel tries to explain.
Wow, good, good.
You
Let me hear
Doctor.
Biru first. Biru has raised his hand. Let Biru take, then Bekal will say something. Yes,
Okay,
Biru, go ahead.
I want to add something. In Ethiopia, as I have known, there is a legal department for the company. If there is a problem in terms of the company, there is a legal department who is taking caring or who is concerned about the companies, not about the shareholders. And also there is no complaint management department at all. So if the shareholders coming to the company and if they want to complain something or if they want to raise any issue in terms of correcting actions, in the department stands for the company's right only. That means the CEO and the board of directors can do anything as their wishes only. So, as Ayala said, and Kruvel said, there is no practical authority who stands for the right of the shareholders. As a legal department, as Ethiopian rule, any person has the right to sue and to be sued. Shareholders has also the right to sue or to be sued. So they may solve their problem by accuse or by taking any complaints to the legislatory bodies. Not that they are not solve their problem immediately. There is no guardians for the right of these peoples. So practically, the shareholders is just accepting what is decided by the board of directors or by the CEOs at the end of the year. They just taking the decision, and they just they may have the right to give any comments during annual meeting. So there is no guardians at all in practice.
No, doctor, but Burru, there is a law. There is a law.
There is a law,
but if the shareholders are strong enough, they can take their case to the court. I remember.
I told you.
There was a case with
Zamanba. I said you. I said that they have the right to sue and to be sued. According to the law of Ethiopians,
of the company, it should be the shareholders who can take their case to the court.
But there is no department there is no department in the company that they are
it is not expected
inside the company.
Bro, it is not expected.
For example, if
this should not be the part of the company. This should be external body that keeps the right of the shareholders. It should
not
be
only that.
External body like the National Bank.
No. Practically, there. No, Alex. Let me tell you one thing. There should be, if it is a company established by shareholders, there should be a complaint management department inside the company.
There should be, but you didn't expect justice from that department because it is managed by the management and the board.
That is a big problem.
From what I'm hearing, before Bekal speaks, I think what Ayala is saying is that he was trying to say that yes, the law is there, but the problem is enforcement. And he's just trying to compare the way I've said in the Kenyan context, we have what we call the Capital Markets Authority, which then tries to provide law that protects both the shareholders, the majority and the minority. But again, what I'm getting is that such a forum does not exist in the Ethiopian context. And what Bill is coming up with is the company having maybe a legal department that then handles such cases as they come. So that's the kind of argument I'm trying to get here. That one, it could be there in the law, but there's no enforcement.
Let me add one thing.
Yeah.
There is a legal department inside the company, but this legal department or this lawyer is taking any instructions from the board and from the CEOs only. So he stands for the rights of the companies only, not for the shareholders. Generally, as a company, he's standing for the right of the company generally. That means he's not directly accept the complaints of the shareholders, or he's not standing for individuals, but generally. Maybe he's instructed by the one who has big share. For example, if you come to Habesha Breweries, the major share is owned by the Bavaria, the Netherlands company. You know, more than 60% is owned by this this company. So any individuals from Ethiopia, more than 8,000 Ethiopians are the shareholders of this company, but they are not standing for the rights of these peoples. They just has a great connection with the board of directors and the one who has the major shares, and for CEOs only. They are one group and decide everything as their wishes. So the shareholders may raise very few points during annual meetings, and there is no combined solution, or they are not answering every individual's questions. So the rights of individuals, these 8,000 people, for example, in the case of Habesha Breweries, they are not getting any solution from the company side, because there is no any legal body standards for their rights. Just as a general, for the minority at all. There is no even office opened for these shareholders, you know. So only the one who has the major share can lead the company by dealing with the board of directors and the CEOs. This is the way how in Ethiopia things are working.
Wow, as far as I know. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Becca, you wanted to say something. I think before there was you wanted to say something. You had raised your hand, but I think I'm getting very good insight from Biru and Alemayu. Becca, you wanted to say something? You had raised your hand. Good. Yes, but I think then Becca has disappeared a bit, but I thought you wanted to say something. Yes, I think Biru has given a good example from Habesha Breweries, where he says the majority shareholder has over 60%, and there are 8,000, almost 8,000 Ethiopians who have shares, and basically they form the minority. And according to him, their rights, it's like the majority shareholder makes all the decisions, if I get it right. So I think what then you would say is that there's a big problem in corporate governance, and maybe then we are starting seeing that there are certain issues that need to be corrected with regard to protection of shareholder rights, protection of stakeholder rights and obligations. So I guess those are things that maybe are coming out clearly from this discussion. So again, so possibly then you could then try to discuss maybe from the Ethiopian context, how would you go about improving? Now, without discussing this, because this looks at the Kenyan context, I would want to maybe just to now try to explain how improving minority promotes, how you would from the Ethiopian perspective, what do you think should be done? For example, Biru, having mentioned the case study of Habesha breweries, what do you think? And Bekal, having mentioned the case study of the banking sector, what do you think are some of the things that can be done to try to improve on minority shareholder and stakeholder protection from these two examples that you have given us? In your opinion, what do you think can be done?
Shall I try?
Yeah, just go on. Yeah.
As the company has its own legal department, this legal department stands for the rights of an employee or the rights of the company. That means it stands for the benefits or the rights of the management team and the one who has more shares. As the company has the legal department, the shareholders should have their own legal department, and as well as there is a team who has collect the complaints of the shareholders. That means there should be a complaint management team who take informations from shareholders and discuss with the management team and the CEO. If the case is too serious, this team should discuss with the board of directors. So the shareholders should get immediate solution for their questions or for their problems they are facing, you know. So my comment is to have the legal department on top of the department that the company has. There should be a separate legal department who collect or gather the information raised or problems or issues raised from the shareholders and give a solution.
Good. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Bishal, go ahead. You have raised your hand. So thank you, Biru. I think that's a very good comment on how we can improve minority stakeholders and shareholders in Ethiopia. Bishal?
Yes,
go
Doctor.
ahead.
Just I wanted to raise a question for Biru.
Yeah.
As he has told us concerning his previous office, Habesha Brewery, there are some external shareholders and national shareholders. Do you think that having the problem of not having a compliant handler in a Habesha Brewery can amount to nationally just saying there is no room for having for shareholder compliance or for the right of shareholders?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
You have raised that those Habesha shareholders are more than 30% are the Netherlands brewery company, right?
Yes, more than 60%.
More than 60, the vice versa. Whereas you have told us that even if there is some problem is happening, the shareholders' rights and obligations are not properly handled within a Habesha share company, within a Habesha brewery. My question is whether in a Habesha brewery there is a compliant handling office or legal departments in Habesha or not, can amount to nationally where there is no protection and legal safety for shareholders' rights in Ethiopia?
That's a good question.
I mean, you are just generalizing. You have been experiencing what is going in Habesha and generalizing. There is no.
Yeah, I'm telling you that there is a legal department for the general or for in the corporate level, you know. This guy or this legal department is hired to give a solution or to stand for the rights of the company as a corporate level, you know. But for minorities' rights, there should be a legal body who is concerned about for the right of these people. And there should be a department or a team who is concerned about for the day-to-day activities or for the day-to-day problems that the shareholders are facing. The shareholders should not wait until the board calls a meeting, until a yearly meeting, you know. Now, practically, as we have seen, the shareholders are telling their problems for the legal body or the board of directors or for the whole share departments once a year only, you know. So by having a meeting once a year, the problems of the shareholders or the problems of the minorities could not be solved. So to get a solution, immediate solution for day-to-day activity problems, there should be a legal body stands for the right of the minority and to give a solution for the rights of everyone, actually. Even this problem is not only for the shareholders only, even for the right of an employee. Even the right of an employee, there is a, as you know, there is a legal, there is a legislatory codes of conduct in Ethiopia, which stands for the laborers. But if you come to the practical part, a lot of companies doesn't have even the labor union. For example, if you come to Habesha Breweries, we don't have a labor union, you know, even. So any employee can't raise his question for anybody because or the legal department stands for the right of the company only, for the benefit of the company only. If during COVID, for example, a management team can decide employees to leave without any reasons, you know, without any reasons, just to maximize the profit of the company, they may give you a termination paper. So if there was a legal body or a labor union, for example, for the rights of the people, you can get immediate solution, and this authority can stand for your rights. So generally, if you come to the shareholders side also, by having a meeting once a year, it's not possible to give a solution for the right or for the benefits of the shareholders. Only the beneficiaries are the one who has major share and board of directors, as well as the CEOs or the management teams only. The minorities are influenced because of the lack of the legislatory body near to these shareholders. That I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But I think, yes, you have given it a very good approach. But if I got Bisho right, Bisho was saying yes, and maybe what you're now trying to say is that, maybe before I give Alenayu, I think Bisho was of the opinion that you are giving only a case study of Habesha Breweries.
Right.
And what he was wondering is that so? Are you trying to say that what is to be done at Habesha, like having the legal department, is now what is to be done in all companies across the country? So maybe his opinion was, could there be now maybe a national body that would control, would help oversee such an issue? Maybe let me hear what Ayele says.
Thank you, Doctor. I am opposing Burru because let us come back to the relationship. Now, the legal department is part of the management of the company, which acts as an agent.
There is no network. Oh my God.
So, there is a conflict of interest. And the salary is paid by the management of the company for those legal department employees. They can't stand against the company. It is not proper. It is not the legislator body or the one who stands for the rights of the shareholders or the minority shareholders should be an independent body who has a legal
Mandate.
authorization from the government and the country. It should have a mandate like the National Bank. In the case of the financial institutions, the National Bank has the mandate to regulate, to control, and to monitor the transactions, to keep the law. As I told you previously, there is a law, a written law. In the Ethiopian case, it is called a business law. It has a lot of things listed there. So any company should be monitored by the regulatory body whether they are
He lost.
You lost a bit.
Yeah, I lost him.
Yeah, even me, I think maybe.
But there is, I want to comment something.
Yeah.
There is an industry minister who tries to control the industries. There is a chamber of commerce who participates in associations and companies. Maybe they did not fully try to exercise
Doctor,
their
my
power.
network is interrupting frequently. That's why.
Oh, you've come back? Okay,
Do you hear
just
me now?
finish, then Bekal can take over, yeah?
Yeah.
Has it come back? Or Bekal can continue. Just continue, Bekal, and finish, yeah.
Bekal.
Yeah, Bekal, just continue and finish.
Yeah. They cannot fully utilize their power to make an impact on those corporations and social associations. But there is a power in industry minister and the chamber of commerce. The companies already registered on industry minister and chamber of commerce. They try to control, but they cannot fully implement their power to control those problems. And there is no new window, which is a risk and corporate governance department. There is no in other factories, but in our bank there is an only one department. Did you lose me?
Yeah, no, I'm hearing you.
There is a department which is called risk and corporate governance. It has got a director. They brought a brochure to read for us and for the shareholders and for the stakeholders also to create a good governance. That is my bank practices. But the factories and industries should raise this problem with the industry minister and the chamber of commerce. I think this is my idea. Thank you, doctor.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a good observation. That's right. I don't know whether Ayele has come back because he had a different opinion. I think maybe he still has network problems. But I think, what I've learned, let me see. I think, he has joined, yeah? Yeah, he's joined back.
I joined.
Yeah, you want to finish what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes, I want to finish.
Yeah.
You know, a department in a company cannot work for the
national.
The shareholders' right. It works for the company. How could an employee of the company who is employed to protect the rights of the company and to stand for the company in the court can accuse the company for the right of the employee. It is not possible. They can advise, the legal department can advise the HR department to respect the law, but they can't file them in the court. That is not possible. But the government has to establish or has to organize a regulatory body. Like currently in Ethiopia, they are establishing a capital market.
Yes.
They already distributed the draft law to be commented by every stakeholder. They are starting to establish the capital market. So it should be facilitated by the government.
Yes.
To establish this independent body that can regulate and monitor the rights of the shareholder and the establishment of the share company. That will also help the development of the country in the economy. Now in Ethiopia, people are not willing to buy shares except bank and insurance. People buy shares of bank and insurance because they have a trust on the national bank that the national bank can guarantee their or keep their shareholders' rights. Am I clear, doctor?
Yes, you are clear. You are clear. I think,
this should be the direction.
I totally agree with you because that then answers Bishop's question because Bishop was concerned about looking at the entire country and all sectors. But you see, Biru's answer was also very good, but it was focused more on Habesha breweries, you see. And so I think the long-term solution, just like Ayele says, and I'm really agreeing with him, is to have a national body that is mandated, that is formed independent and formed by the government, that then can oversee these issues of shareholder and stakeholder protection. As he says, there's already a draft for Capital Markets Authority, and as he says, all the stakeholders have been given chance to comment. I think that's the way to go, because that would then be, as he says, and Ayala is very right, you see, given the example of Biru, the Habesha, you see, when you talk of the legal department, they are employed by the company. They draw their salary from the company. So basically, it is in their interest to protect the company, and they are not very independent in their decision making. So that's the only problem when you are talking of protection of shareholder rights and stakeholder rights from the company's legal department. I think the long-term solution, I tend to agree with Alemayu, is to have a body that is set up, that is independent, and that then will be able to, has the mandate from the government and is quite independent to protect shareholders and stakeholders. So for me, I think that would be the long-term solution to cover this problem nationally. Good. I think finally, just run down as we wind up some of the issues that we've looked at. What stakeholder groups might directors of a company take into consideration, and how might the stakeholders' interest impact on the company? What stakeholder groups might directors of a company take into consideration, and how might the stakeholders' interest impact on the company? Right? In what ways might stakeholders' interests conflict with each other? What role do you believe stakeholders should play in corporate governance? Critically contrast the role of shareholders and stakeholders. A company's long-term success is dependent on its stakeholders. Therefore, it can no more fail to take stakeholders' interests into consideration than it can those of stakeholders. There's a problem here. A company's stakeholders, therefore it can no more fail to take stakeholders' interests into consideration that it can those of its stakeholders. No, there's a problem there. I think I'll critically discuss this statement. What corporate government mechanism might help with representing the views of stakeholders. Good. I think somebody can just pick any of these that you think you can just try to answer and give it a try. Let's start with number one. What stakeholder groups might directors of a company take into consideration? And how might the stakeholders' interest impact on the company? Is there any particular group that you think the directors would be very much interested in, and how this group would impact on the company? Anybody who has who can try that? Is there any way?
Stakeholder.
Yeah. Yeah, just try it. Yeah.
The stakeholders has a great impact on the company. For example, some stakeholders might have a share from the company and they may not have a share from the company. For example, again, if I take Habesha Breweries, if you don't mind, if I repeat Habesha Breweries case now and then. For example, Habesha Breweries are sponsoring the Bunna fan clubs. The Bunna fan, it's a football club. The brewery is sponsoring this club by spending a lot of money, in millions. They are spending a lot of money. And in the other side, the stakeholders or the Bunna fans, that means the Bunna fans is a stakeholder for Habesha Breweries because they are consuming Habesha products and always promoting Habesha's product wherever they are going. So the board of directors should take care of this group. Because if there is any problem arising from this group, it becomes a failure of the company at all. The companies may close because
becomes a failure of the company.
Because it is there is more than 40,000 stakeholders from this group. The one who supports the Bunna fund.
I think that's a good one. You've given so, good. I think that's a very good example from Biru. Still again on Habesha.
It is the first group from Africa. The one who has many supporters for football club. By the way, it is the first one from Africa. So,
Bunna.
If this Bunna,
how many
Bunna
supporters?
If this in number,
how many supporters?
The first. Pardon? Supporters.
Okay.
Supporters, and there's the first stakeholders who has a great belongingness to the company, and so when Habesha starts its product starts to deploy its product, more than 20,000 birr was investing per year for this group. So if there is a problem in between the board or the management team or Habesha employees, if anything is arising in between this group, it will be a serious failure. So these stakeholders should be treated like a customer, like ordinary customers.
I like, that's a good observation.
Like ordinary customers, there should be a good channel of communication in between this group and the company. So the stakeholders should be treated like a customer, because the benefits, direct or indirectly, the stakeholders are supporting the company through different ways. That's the thing that I
think that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Maybe I just wanted to find out. You are saying they have how many supporters, which makes them the largest in Africa, the Buna Club?
More than 40,000.
Yeah, 40,000. Okay, good. So I think that's a good example. Again, he's given us a case study of Abesha breweries, which I think is good enough. Let's look at number 2. In what ways? 2 people, there are people who have entered the room. Why not enter? But yeah, let me just admit there are some people who have left. Okay, fine. I've admitted them. Number 2, in what ways my stakeholders' interests conflict with each other? Do you think there are ways stakeholders' interests can conflict? And how? Is it possible to have stakeholders' interests conflicting?
Yes. Yes, there might be a conflict. For example, if we take suppliers, there will be a competition in between the suppliers. For example, if 2 suppliers are competing to offer the same product for the same company, there might be a price war in each other. So there might be a conflict each other in between the suppliers. On top of that,
there could be, yes, I like
on
that.
top of that,
on
top of that, like the first example that the Bunna funds, for example, some groups of the Bunna funds may change their support and may divide it into 2 different groups, and some of the stakeholders may shift to another company by any competitor's offer. So there might be a conflict in each other.
ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም።
ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ
በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ይቻላል።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና
ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ከኢትዮጵያ ሲቪል አቪዬሽን ባለስልጣን ሙሉ እና ባገኘንባቸው የፍላይት ኦፕሬሽን እና የሆስተስ ስልጠናም በመዝገባ ላይ ነን።
ጥያቄና መልስ፣ የክፍል ስራዎች ብሎም ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁ አይነት
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ
በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ።
አድራሻ ከ22 ማዞሪያ ወደ ሾላ ገበያ በሚወስደው መንገድ 150 ሜትር ገባ ብሎ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።